Hello, welcome to StudioPixel. In this tutorial, we're going to discuss about the reference editor in Maya. Now, reference editor is something which is really important for production pipeline. Why? Because this is something where you can create a particular model and you can use it in a way almost kind of a non-destructive way or non-linear way throughout the production. Okay, so let me give you a brief idea about why this is so important. Now, let's suppose I have a model over here. I have a model and I transfer it to my rigging department, and then I shift it to my animation department. Now, after rigging, my and it's transferred to the animation department. But what if while doing animation I want to make certain changes in my rig? Now that's something cannot be possible if you import the file. Okay, so if you are importing this, now what will happen, this import is not going to preserve the values from the rigging department. This is a copy of that file, not that exact file. Where and if you re-import that uh, rigging file, that will not going to transfer the animation, and that will create a whole lot of mess while you are transferring the animation to your rig. Now for that, referencing is going to help you out a lot. In the similar way, while you are making a scene, let's suppose I'm making a particular scene, and there are a lot of objects into that particular scene which I have modeled, like a box, maybe a sphere, or maybe a cone, whatever it is, or maybe an entire scene where there's an interior, where is a bed is out there, or maybe a table lamp out there, you know and there's a window and all. Now what happened that I want to change my bed model over here, you know so while you already made that scene, I mean by importing all these different models from different files, what happened is, I'm really sorry about my rough drawing and all, just to make you understand and all. So while you import them, what will happen, if you need to change them, you need to change on your base model of that bed, and then you have to re-import it again. It's not going to uh, match the same things, same positions and all. You have to make everything from a scratch point of view. That's why the referencing comes to play, where we can non-destructively update this particular bed, and it will be automatically called updated on your scene file. So let's see how, just giving an example of that particular thing what we have just discussed. So go to File and Create Reference Option Box. Now I'm going to discuss about the option box later on, an overview, and but just to make you understand why this referencing is so important, giving it some very basic example of that. Go to Reference. I've already created three files like ball01, ball02, and ball03. Let's call the ball01 over here. So now this is something really interesting, and now I have already opened up the original ball01 file. This is the ball01 file over here. Now so what I will do is, first of all, what is the plus point of this is untitled scene, where I have already imported my sorry, reference my ball01 file. You can see there's a ball01. Now I'll come back to this suffix sorry, prefix setup thing that I will explain you later on. Now this is a reference file from ball01. Now let's suppose what is a very powerful thing about referencing. The first powerful thing which I will say about is I cannot delete this. If you hit delete, you can see that cannot delete certify as locked on read-only children. The reason is this is not an imported file. This is not an though this is an entity, you can change a lot of things, but you cannot delete just like that. Yes, if I what if I don't want this to be visible? Now, yes, you can put it inside a layer, and you just selected objects, and you can just uh, put it inside a layer and then hide it. Clear. Okay, but if I really don't want them, so I can just turn it off and turn it on from here also. So that is something which really important. I cannot delete the file. So I was talking about the scene file where I have called my bed, and I cannot accidentally delete it anyway. I mean, this is not imported. This is not something I cannot change. Now, if I have to change something, let's suppose I make an accidental change on this particular object, but what will happen is, let's suppose I have changed an app, I mean accidentally I changed that model. What it will happen is, it is not going to affect the original file. If I even if I save this particular file, let's suppose I have I've saved this particular file, that is not going to affect the original mother file, which is this bed one. So I have if I make it a import also, that is not going to change, but that is not going to help either, because it doesn't make any sense. So now, but in the opposite side, let's suppose I have this original mother file or the parent file, that is ball01, and I'm going to change it, like let's suppose this like that. I'm sorry for the crude one, but yeah, this is the file. This is a object that I changed, and now I just save this file. Now remember, I have already called upon this particular ball01 within this. Now what will happen? I'll have to just reload this, and immediately you can see it's get updated. So whatever the files my parent file will be, it will get updated immediately whenever you are opening that particular file which has been already been referenced, and and that will happen throughout the production. So you can understand one thing, that if I'm actually, oops. Okay, so what is happening over here is that I have a model over here, and that model has been distributed to different artists. Maybe this is a bed model which happening in episode 1, episode 2, episode 3, episode 4, the same bed model. And now parallelly we are working on these 4 episodes, or maybe 4 scenes or 4 shots. Now these are referenced, like these 3 are referenced, this has been import. Now if I change my original model, if the imported files are not going to be updated, whereas all these 3 files will get automatically updated. So that's how the non-destructive way we can uh, uh, keep all the artists in the same page. You know what, this is something which has been already updated. Now for doing that, we need to understand how this referencing works. So let's see how that particular referencing thing works. Just going back to my, let's just save it, and I'll just reload that one. In fact, I have to delete it. I'll just show you the examples how we can actually get it. There are the few examples, sorry, a few options which I want to show you, and this will be very overview. Now the first 3 option box is very important. The first one is deferred one, second one is lock, third one is group. Now what is the deferred one? If I turn on deferred and say a reference, like suppose I've called ball01, and if you hit open, actually nothing happened. And it's actually happened. What happened is that in the reference editor you will see that file has been called, but that hasn't been activated. So that That means your file, though you have imported this one, is still haven't activated that particular file. So this is something which can help you out, that sometimes unnecessary things has been called inside that unnecessary files has been referenced inside the same file, where which you can easily you know check and maybe disable or delete this. So initially none of the files will be activated. You just go through the list, and then you will just manually turn on all the files which are which are the important file for this particular scene. Or maybe you can split up a particular uh, uh, entire scene. Let's suppose locations, uh, sorry, you can come up with different locations, and you are going to uh, let's suppose there's one place, and there's one other place, and there's another place. Now these three are different one, and now you want only this particular plot to be turned on, and but this is an entire scene file which made, I mean, modeled together. They are connected, but they are not exactly the same uh, part of the they are part of the same model, but they are separated. But and you want to turn on each and every a portion of it. So this is that's also can be a case. So yeah, so this is the first option box, sorry, first option for the referencing, that is deferred. Now I'm just removing this one from here. Now another one is a locked one. Now what is a locked one? If I go to reference and say let's this time ball 2. Now if you see that immediately there's a lock button will come up. Now what is going to happen with the locked one? If you select them, you can see my move tools are not activated, and if you see the channel box, that has been all locked. So what is happening over here? I'm calling a particular file, but I cannot move it. I cannot change the translation values of this particular uh, uh, model. Now, the fair enough question will be, what if I call a file? Sorry, what if I call a file as a deferred one, and then I wanted to lock it? You actually can, after importing a particular sorry, after referencing a particular file in a deferred mode, you have to just go to right click on that particular file, go to reference, and you have to use this lock reference or unlock reference. So you can unlock it, and you can go to reference, and then you can lock it. So it doesn't matter that whether at the time of your referencing that file, you should have everything has to be done at the time of referencing itself. No, you don't have to. You can change the settings after that also. So this is another one, and I'm just removing this one right now. Okay. So the third one is a group one. Now what is happening over here, that it will create another group, and you can rename it. Now this is also very important, that I want my entire file which I'm importing as a single group. This will help to identify which model or which files you are actually working on. Let's suppose I make a group name. Let's suppose main, sorry, main, oops, what happened? Main ball underscore grp. Now this is something I'd like to tell you, that naming is something is really important in reference. That I will come after a few minutes within this namespace option. But yes, every time you create a particular file, please name it properly. It will gonna help you a lot. And I can turn this on the locator also, which will be connected with the group. So either with the locator or without the locator, you can call it. So let's suppose I call with the locator reference, let's suppose ball 03, and now you can see the it's already created a now I would like to show you the outliner. This will be a very interesting one. Now this is something really interesting. Now see, one is my locator where I can change its position. Now why this is important, that after referencing the file, I may want my uh, object to reposition a little bit, which value cannot be stored anywhere unless or anywhere extra unless I'm moving I'm having a rigged file character where my global controller is there. I don't want that. I want a separate thing. Now after that there's a group node also. So there, if you want to connect this particular object with certain other objects within this particular scene file, this will gonna help you out. Otherwise you have to create an uh, entirely new group, and then you have to change the group into a very under a different group, and then you can get it 000 a value. So now you can see, though I have changed my position over here, my group node is still actually having that same value. Now even after that, oops, sorry, even after that, my reference file is still intact, its own local value. So this is something really important while you are changing frequently your positions, or maybe you are reusing one particular object, which you might be interested to change its position around. So this is something which is also helpful when you are using a large scene, and you are reusing a lot of assets. Okay, so I'm just remembering this one again. Let's go to the reference window and just reset the settings. Okay, the next thing will be file type, which can be anything like obj to audio file, or any other listed file types. This is almost kind of self-explanatory. The second one, the load option, the loading settings, and this is really important sometimes. Now this I'd like to load save reference to the load state. That means it will be default, which will just import the file, which will be activated every time you open the file. Now load all references means if I load I mean, at the time of opening the file, uh, all of the reference file will be loaded at the time of opening this particular file. Now, this can be very tricky because sometimes you don't want them to load at the time of your opening a file, because that will sometimes takes a lot of time to recall if the files are quite heavy, which where unnecessary files will be loaded. Now here is the tricky part, is sometimes people get forget about, okay, I have certain objects in my scene and I literally forget to load that particular reference, and which might create a lot of confusions among the artists. So that is also very interesting. That's why it's very tricky whether you want to load all of your references or not. Now one thing is top level references. That means is when you have, let's suppose, I want to okay, fine. So what is this top level one? So let's suppose I have one object A. This I have uh, referenced inside an object B. So these are the two different files. Okay, now this has been referenced over here, and now this one is referenced to object C. I don't know why I'm saying objects. Anyway, so let's suppose the object C is something which is the last file where I have imported all, I mean both of them. Now here object A is my top level. So when I'm talking about this option called sorry, only top level references, I'm only talking about this object A. This is something I want to load automatically, not the object B. Now this is something really tricky. Now I haven't actually personally found a single scenario where I can use that, but I can imagine a certain thing, a certain scenario where I don't want, I can use this kind of top level referencing useful, I found. Now let's suppose there is a chest, you know, chest box of, and this is something called locked. Okay, now inside this chest box there will be some jewels. Now the jewels are referenced inside this box, and then this particular box has been referenced in a scene. Now let's suppose uh, there's a scene, or maybe there's a shot where the box is getting opened. Okay, okay, the box is getting opened, and now my jewels will be visible. But there are other shots, there are other scenes where my jewel box will be closed. Now this is really classic example where we can use this uh, top level this thing. So my jewels has been referenced inside this box, and this box has been referenced inside this scene. Now every shot I don't require those jewels to be loaded because I don't need them. So I need only the top level, this one, uh, which is the box, and which I want to load. Now this is something which you have to be very careful that which one is actually which one you are putting inside the as a reference. So your top level should be the first one which you want to be loaded, and the second one can be ignored. So in this way, if I included something inside the jewel, is going to make the jewel as a second level, not the first level. So this is really tricky and interesting one. You don't have to. I would prefer that you take the call according to your requirement, where you really need to make this call. Otherwise, you can just call all of the references and you just turn it off, which okay, yeah, load all references, or maybe you can go for the last option, which is load no reference, which means it's not a single reference objects will be loaded. Okay, so now let's get to the second one. Now this portion I generally leave it to the situation, or the scene file that we, or the kind of production design that we have, that uh, but these are very important one, let me tell you. Now these things I actually planned it to create another tutorial for going into details, otherwise it will be very lengthy and very so, and for the overview purpose you don't have to worry about this one. So first of all, by default is a shared network where all the duplicate references by the nodes, and the second one is the display layers. So what will happen, the display layers of that particular parent file will also embedded over here. Same goes the shading network and render layers. So they will add the render layers and add the render layers over your scene file, I mean the the file where you're actually creating the references. So these all these things are almost kind of a self-explanatory, but I still want to show you later on in a descriptive manner of how these things actually works, and how these things will be really helpful for us to use at times. Okay, now comes to the namespace, which is very important one. Now by default, if you go to edit and reset settings, by default what happened that this is the default settings that it will have. Now when you select the namespace, now I have already told you that I have already renamed everything to ball01, ball02, and ball03. Now let's suppose I call one as by using namespace. Now if we don't use namespace, there's a warning file from Maya itself, saying we strongly recommend that you use namespace to resolve the name clashes, which is really important in terms of reduction, because you never know which naming is out there. You cannot use any default naming, anything, even in the shaders, textures, nothing. You cannot make any default shaders, default naming of that. So I definitely use the namespace. Now first of all, the first option is the you selected namespace as parent and add a new namespace, which will be the file name. So what they're saying is my file name of importing. So let's do this thing. Okay, call the references now and hit open. Now you see, if you select the object, you will see over here we are having this as a name, and then there is a prefix which is the same as your file name. Now what happened over here, my file name is also ball01 and my object name is also ball01. Okay, so this is something which can be a little bit confusing, which I generally don't recommend. What my recommendation will be is using your own namespace with string. Okay, and create let's suppose uh, outdoor. Now this is something I want to use as a namespace prefix. Now if I go to reference like ball1 itself, now outdoor, you can see now outdoor colon ball underscore 01. So that means that namespace has been used according to your choice. Now every time when you are using this, you can use as your namespace. Now the thing is, you can use your customized one, which is this one, and I always recommend you to create your own customized namespace rather than going for our next option, which is the merge into selected namespace and rename incoming object that match. Now this is really tricky. Sometimes you can come up with a very weird naming and all. I really don't want to. So right now I'm not going to use the outdoor. I'm just reference and call ball3. Now what will happen over here is, this is my ball1. Now this is ball3. Now what happened is there is no other file which is there as a ball3. So what will happen is it took only that particular name. It doesn't bother to change its name and all. Now what will happen if I call ball3 again with this merge into selected namespace and rename incoming objects that match? So what will happen, I'll just call ball3 again, and you can see it's become ball4. Why? Because the ball3 has already been existed in this particular scene. So as immediately it sees that there is another ball3 is there, is just change its name to ball4, and there is no way to control it. And you can see the reference, which is really interesting. If you select this particular object, like, this is the object, select file contents. So this is the file which is the ball3, and this one is the file which is at the actual earlier ball 3. So the ball 4 has become ball 3, but in the object's name, but your reference file is showing this is a ball 3. Only there is rn1 is been made because there is a name clash over here. So this will create a huge confusion if there is an identical character with different shading network, an identical character with different attributes and all, which can create a huge confusion. So I will strongly recommend you to avoid that. Okay. uh, yeah, so I'll just okay. So I will suggest always to using the namespace strings and customize it, not rename, auto rename, or maybe rename with the filing things well. Okay, so now the proxy settings, I would recommend, I would definitely going to create a completely new tutorial on this proxy settings, because that is something really really exciting and important things to know about. And this is the overview, and I'm not going to dig into the proxy settings over here. I'm just giving an idea about what the proxy setting is, where you can, yeah, create a low poly version of it, and you can avoid the scene setup with the high poly objects while referencing, because of sometimes referencing can be really really super expensive in terms of time, and you just don't want to waste your production time on that. Okay, so that's it for today, and hope you enjoy this. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you very much.